The second panelist is another key legislator, someone who has also proven his mettle. Right Honorable Yakubu Dogara, former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Federal Republic of Nigeria, CON. Please put your hands together for him. And then we have a specialist consultant, development specialist consultant, Madam Umar Nobu Mohammed, to complete the panel. Please put your hands together for Madam Umar Nobu Mohammed. Because we will begin by making sure that we have our time on our hands. We will not make too many introductions. Very, very short introductions will be made by each person, and then we go into the interactive session proper. Once again, the title is Unlocking the Potentials of Northern Nigeria in Mining, Agriculture, and Power. This is a prelude to the main paper of the day to be delivered by Mr. Mohammed Hayatuddin, who will be speaking to us on harnessing technology.
Portfolios collectively reflect the very pillars of regional integration, which is why we are gathered here today. Senator Dr. Bukola Saraki, former President of the Senate, brings deep experience in governance, institutional reform, and innovative financing, which is very critical for designing the structures of resources to deliver cross-border projects. Right Honorable Yakubu Dogara, the former Speaker of the House of Representatives, offers unmatched legislative and political insight. He reminds us that no regional framework can thrive without strong federal and state alignment, policy continuity, and legislative safeguards across election cycles. Honorable Bello El Rufai, member of the House of Representatives for Kaduna North, represents the voice of a new generation of leaders that we have here today. His focus on youth participation and job creation will ensure this plan is anchored in the aspirations of Northern Nigeria. Its young people, which are its most powerful demographic. Umar Nobu Mohammed, the development specialist and consultant we have here today, will ground us in evidence and economic logic, mapping our state's comparative advantages and showing how specialization can drive integration of, instead of competition between all our 19 states. I strongly believe that as a collective, this panel reflects 4 essential levers of transformation: governance and financing, legislative and political alignment, youth leadership, and economic integration. As we begin, I invite us not just to exchange ideas, but to push for clear commitments that will turn dialogue into durable action and help shape the future of Northern Nigeria for generations to come. I would like to start with you, Your Excellency. Looking at the theme of the conversation we're having here today, unlocking, the potential of our region around these 3 critical areas. Looking at, governance frameworks, we all know that regional plans often fail at the execution layer. We talk a lot, but when it gets to implementation, we have a lot of, failures here and there. What single institutional mechanism, do you think we can have? Are we looking at like the Northern Governors Forum Secretariat or a new intergovernmental compact? Would you back, in your opinion, what institution do you think can back delivery?
Thank you very much. Let me just do a few recognize and thank the conveners of this conference led by our elders. I'll put the emphasis on that, and let me recognize the common speaker, another member of panelists, a member of House of Representatives, all the leaders here. For the sake of time, let me go here. I start when I say I want to recognize the leaders here who have made this possible, and it goes back to answering your question. Because I think the mistake we probably want to make quickly is to dive into the details. And that's where the mistake starts from. I'm speaking with my very humble experience. Why do I say that? It is not that we don't have plans, or it's not that we don't have people who are capable of making those plans. But let us take this morning as a good example. The people who will give you that commitment, because you ask for a commitment, are not here. The people who will make it happen, meaning either leaders in the political system or business world, are not here. So the best we're going to achieve here, I hope, is that we're going to discuss the issues. But if we really want to make a change as regards unlocking the benefits and ensuring the right framework, we need to talk to the decision makers and the people that will implement and make it happen. I was telling somebody earlier on that if the topic was unlocking the potentials of regaining political power, this place will be full. There will be people standing as well. But the reality is that this is the power, and this is how we get it wrong. Economic power and improving on education and power and infrastructure is what is going to reform Northern Nigeria. We should continue and so it is a multifaceted thing. It can't be just one mechanism. Starting from the top of purposeful leadership, starting from what I call deliberate leadership. Deliberate leadership means it can't happen by chance. It can't. It's not. We're not going to unlock mining by chance. Because if we ask ourselves, even in the 70s, when we had the oil map, it was not by chance. We decided in the 70s that this is our plan. So we need that level of commitment. We also need to understand, like, for example, they need to be also largely, maybe because I'm biased because of being someone from legislative, you need a legislative framework. Because some of these commitments are long-term commitments. Anybody who's going to mine is not going to see his return of investment within 4 years. He's talking about 15, 20 years. And policies are not enough to encourage that level of investment. So there has to be also collaboration on the legislative arm of government. I used to joke, my good friend, how the joke was, seriously, there was a time that Northern Nigeria controlled National Assembly, executive arm of government. You ask yourself, what did we do with it? So the point is that there has to be collaboration between public sector, led by our governors, and even our governors need to work as a region, not Zamfara going in one direction, Gombe going in the other direction. We should see what our comparative advantages and come as a team, working also with the National Assembly members from the North. Because there are legislation that must be passed. If they're not passed, there's no way we're going to see investment. Then we have business people also from the northern part of Nigeria. How much do we get them involved? Because at the end of the day, this kind of investment cannot be done by government. But private sector needs to be confident that my investment is safe and I am well protected. So in answering your question, there are many, many layers that need to come down. Majority of all the things you see, whether it's mining, whether it's agriculture, power, it's all about policy framework, structural deficiencies that need to be addressed. These are common. Finance and investment, we talked about significantly. Incentives in the country. So there are many, many, many layers. So I don't think I can say there's one particular, but if you say, if I want to take away from here, it's first, let us have the deliberate and purposeful leadership at all levels, because it's very, people are so, when they say leadership, it's just politician. No, I mean leadership meaning that there must be a forum, whether it's led by the Governors Forum of the Northern, that brings in everybody. I don't know how often, for example, the Governors Forum interacts with members of the National Assembly from the North. How often does the Governors Forum interact with business community from the North? How often does the Governors Forum interact with traditional rulers from the North, especially in the sector of agriculture and mining? Those are the communities. So let stop there in trying to, I think there are more to say, but let me give others an opportunity to say so. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that wonderful insight. And I think what we can take away from what you've said is that everybody has a role to play. So there wouldn't be a need for us to come up with a new structure to look at our existing problems. We all know what our challenges are, and we already have structures that can, deal with those challenges. What we need to do is build the capacity of these structures and forge them to, work on what we already know. Have a strong political will. Of course, you've led the governors forum for a long time, and you know how some of these things, you have first-hand experience regarding how some of these things have been through the years. Thank you so much for that. I would now ask Right Honorable Yakubu Dogara, from your experience as Speaker, sir, what constitutional or statutory reforms do you think are most urgent to give like a regional compact enforceable authority?
Well, thank you very much for that question. First of all, let me recognize the person who is standing in for the convener, the Northern Elders Forum, Air Marshal Bugash, who is the first, and my fellow panelists, the leader, always a leader in whom I'm proud, distinguished Senator Saraki, Honorable and Doctor who are with me here, and all the stakeholders present. I don't know whether it's still good morning. For me, just like my leader said, we always try to put the cart before the horse. And I'm very, very happy that this topic has been thrown up for discussion. And whatever I'm going to say, I'm going to say it from the bottom of my heart because I am a practitioner, I'm involved, and I know where the proverbial dead bodies are buried when it comes to issues relating to mining, agriculture, and power. Perhaps let me first of all say something about the potentials of the North. The North sits on perhaps more than 2/3 of the land in Nigeria. About 70% of the arable land of this country is in the North. And if statistics are anything to go by, the North houses almost 90% of the livestock of this country. So for me, the North is not a land of scarcity. It is a land of profound wealth and abundance if our latent potentials can actually be realized. So, but why is that not the case? I sincerely believe from my experience that it's not a matter of legislation as it is a matter of maybe contextual, I don't want to say cultural, so that I don't seem to be indicting anybody. But the truth is that if you look at the delineation of powers under the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as amended, which is the current constitution, our powers are delineated and carved out into 3 separate channels. You have the exclusive, you have the one that is residual, which is the last one, and then you have the ones that both the state and the federal government, even the third tier of government, the subnationals can act on. So most of these things, especially in the area of power, it was something that was the exclusive preserve of the federal government. It wasn't the exclusive lease. But I think the last House did a constitutional amendment whereby they were able to successfully remove power from the exclusive list. That therefore means that all the subnationals too can develop mini-grids. They have been freed. So there's no more any constraint in that direction is fictional. So, but for me, honestly speaking, if we are to make progress, we need to do something that is radical and transformative in the North. Maintaining the status quo means that these vast potentials that we've spoken about will continue to be underutilized. And what is the status quo? The status quo is just to sit down and do nothing. It is not the absence of legislation, it's not the absence of policy, it's not even the absence of talks like this. Our problem is action. We don't follow through what we discuss. At a point, even the government at the center was borrowing money from the north. And what was the mainstay of our economy then? It was agriculture and mining. We were there before. So the question is that we should stop talking about, looking at people to come and invest. There is something, a fundamental first step that we as Northerners must take first, so that we can make this promise manifest to people who are willing, the national investors. They analyze what is going on, they look at us, they look at the setting, they look at our laws, they look at tax incentives, they look at the issues of security. How secured would my investment be since I've not stolen the money if I put the money here? Honestly speaking, some of these factors are missing presently in the North. And I dare say even Nigeria. Even as I was making my way here, I was reading something about the crisis involving an investment that Dangote has put in this country. It has transformed us, we used to carry the shame of importing what we produce and exporting what we don't have. And this man has done something that has changed this narrative, restored our pride of place. I understand that there are issues, but I still have a perspective as to how we can move forward in mining, in agriculture, and even in the issue of power. There's a lot that can be done. But honestly, the first step starts with us, not legislation, not policy. I wish most of our millionaires in the North, and there are plenty of them, will find time to begin to invest and unlock these opportunities in mining, agriculture, and power, rather than ferrying our monies to Dubai, to Egypt, and to so many other countries. We are creating economic buoyancy in other regions, in other countries, while simply abandoning our people to their fate. You can imagine if we have just 1 million farms set up or mining ventures set up in the North, employing just 50 to 100 staff. I'm telling you, we have resolved the issue of food insecurity, we have resolved the issue of banditry and all those associated crises. But we will do that. Can we do it? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sir, for that very deep insight. And I believe this should trigger a sense of responsibility in everybody seated here today. We need to look inwards, identify our collective comparative advantages, and see how we can under one umbrella to drive development across our region. Now, this drives me to my next question to our development consultant here seated. Talking about comparative advantages, each state, each sub-region within the North has unique assets. We're well aware. Kaduna's manufacturing, Kano's commerce, Niger's agriculture, Zamfara's mining. How should roles be allocated to avoid destructive competition within the 19 states of the North?
Thank you very much for that. And again, recognizing the convener and our elder brothers here on the panel, and my colleagues as well. Thank you for having us. So, destructive competition. I think, first and foremost, we have to understand that competition is good. Competition brings about innovation, brings about efficiency, at the end of the day, it's competition brings fair prices to consumers and it drives excellence. So not all competition is bad. So starting from that premise. Now, indeed, most of our states have their unique comparative advantages, but we should also be cautious not to be too prescriptive when it comes to comparative advantages, when it comes to investment, private sector investment. Where we should seek for collaboration should be in areas like infrastructure, primary infrastructure, across the region, for example, where a congregation of states have the potential to come together to sort of explore renewable energy or hydro or rail connectivity or roads and the likes, or irrigation infrastructure across that will unlock agriculture across certain platforms. When we come up with regional development plans, we should be careful that we don't make them prescriptive to say that agriculture should only be in Niger because it has the land and not another state, and so on and so forth. Because competition at primary production level reduces efficiency and innovation. If we look at countries like China, where they've kind of, within their provinces, they have delineation, so to speak. In Guangdong, you have the apparels, you have and so on and so forth. Shanghai is industrial, and what have you. All of those are at value addition level, not at primary production level. So if you force delineation at primary production level, you're going to stunt growth. So we have to really be careful what we're prescribing. So development plans should be suggestive in terms of what states can pursue and also promote collaboration in primary infrastructure development that would unlock different opportunities in certain locations. For instance, some states have ability to do, so the northwestern states, for example, because of the hydro that they have in different states, can come together and have a framework for how they're going to sort of come together and facilitate that process. And in facilitating that process, it's not to say that the public sector must itself do it, it's to create a framework how to unlock private sector to come in. And as Right Honorable said, some of these things, the frameworks require us to think through what do private sector investors actually look for in order for them to find a destination attractive to come in. The other thing I want to say is when we're designing regional frameworks, we should also, we keep saying we have all the plans at its implementation, but to a large extent, a lot of our plans stop short of giving us the direction. So plans, you see within plans statements like, infrastructure should be provided by who, how much, where's the resource coming from, where is it going to be done? It's not in there. I mean, look at our even medium-term expenditure framework as a country. It has those kind of provisions. You can say it's at a wish list level. Yes, they all say the right thing, what we should do, what we should focus on, it's fine. But at the end of the day, if no one understands who's going to do what and where that resource is going to be mobilized from, then that plan becomes stunted. It will never be implemented. So we should relook at our plans and ensure that there's an action plan framework that defines exactly how everything is going to be done, who's going to do it, and how it's going to be done. Let me rest at this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, and thanks for also bringing up the issue of frameworks, which is very critical. We have a lot of these frameworks. How do we integrate it, and have a regional framework, a unified regional framework that we can, complement across board. How can we collectively manage our assets? How do we share these assets within our region, to trigger economic development? But again, you would agree with me, this has a lot to do with human capital. Looking at the population of our country, the northern region also covers, a large number there, and most of this has to do with the youth. We have a lot of youth that are being underutilized, which is one of the major reasons why we have some of these challenges, you'll agree with me, that we're facing right now. So now coming to you, Honorable Bello, happy to have you here. We want to harness our greatest asset, and if everyone here will agree with me, that greatest asset we have as a region, apart from landmass, is the youth, our youth, the young people of the North. What formal seats do you think youth should hold, by law or by quota? In the regional councils and in sectors, where you have like just the three sectors we're talking about now here, in terms of agriculture, in terms of mining, in terms of power. How do we bring them into co-decide, not just consult, to be in the driver's seat?
Thank you very much for having me. I would like to also stand on existing protocols and thank our parents here, the compass and direction of the North, in particular, our Northern Elders Forum, led by the convener, all the guests here present, Your Excellency, our President of the Senate, and His Excellency, our Speaker of the House of Reps, and Doctor. It's truly an honor to be sharing this stage with you. I'd like to thank the organizers of this event for granting me this honor, particularly my younger brother, Khalil. It's nice to be here. Let me begin by thanking the two leaders here with us. And my reason is quite clear. And I think I'll come back to young people as you rightly asked. The 9th National Assembly, which I worked in, but as a senior legislative aide to Senator Obasani, the governor of Kaduna State, passed the Not Too Young to Run Act. Now, that bill essentially reduced the age for young people to be able and eligible to run for office, particularly the House of Reps and so forth. And it was assented to by the late President Buhari, may God rest his soul. And it wouldn't have been possible without His Excellency Senator Bukola Saraki leading the 9th Senate and His Excellency Yakubu Dogara. So I think this is a perfect chance to show what can happen if civil society, in this case, the likes of Yaga, Enough is Enough, sit with policymakers, legislators to find the way forward. Now, that's the bill. Now, if the bill allows young people to come in, and these young people do not believe in respect, mentorship, innovation, uplifting others, then the bill is pointless. This is why some of us, not just myself, they call us the young parliamentarians, are trying our best to stand out so the door is open for more young people. But you see, for me, the North is at a crossroads and facing a double-edged sword. I liked how you put it. I still think where the population could be an asset, but quite frankly, it isn't right now, because the most that get recruited by bandits are young people. The young people doing cyber crimes are also within our group. Actually, I keep saying I'm young, but I'm 37. I don't know if I fall into that category anymore. What I would advise is there's been some progress in terms of appointees. This particular government has shown that a lot of young people are heading government agencies. You have my brother Khalil in Seni, a few of them. In fact, Your Excellencies, you had Aminu Waziri, then how do you expect them to be competing with students in Shenzhen, in London? It's practically impossible. So for me, when we speak about the North, I think His Excellency Dogara put it very well. There are certain basics we need to work on. For starters, we need to sort out power. Honorable Dogara and the Senate President were quite humble, but I was a legislative aide when they led the National Assembly, and quite frankly, because we forget easily in this country, the attempt to decentralize certain things from the executive list, which power us, like police, started with them. Granted, it was finalized under the Ahmed Lawan-led Senate and the Femi Baja-led House, but Honorable Dogara put it clearly, if power is now in the concurrent list, which essentially means any state government that has abundant solar can set up a power company to generate, distribute, then what are we waiting for? And a lot of young people have given up hope in terms of careers and jobs, so they're into entrepreneurship. Now, whether you tell them to go back to the farms or set up a tech company, if we don't have decent power supply, how can they compete with their mates in Accra? And so I think we need to come back to certain basics that we must sort out before we even start discussing the future of we, let me put it in quotes, I have to pretend to be a big man now, young people and what we can contribute as our quota. I think the potential is limitless. I think young people should accept mentorship. They should realize that slow steps could take you further. And I know I'll be attacked on X because I am a student of privilege, but I still think the system is the same. So that is my view on that for now. And I think we're heading in the right direction. I think a lot of leaders now see the value in young people, but you shouldn't just expect a seat at the table because you are young. That doesn't necessarily mean you're good, or we need to watch it. I currently have legislative aides myself, and none of them is under 40. In fact, the aide that wrote my draft this morning is a brilliant first-class graduate from Benue State, Duse Kwaku, and I'm looking at what she wrote, and they're better than what I prepared to say now. So is she qualified to be in my position? Perhaps. But I made sure all my legislative aides are under 40 to give young people a chance. But yet, when it comes to dealing with my constituency, if I didn't have the wisdom of certain elders and older brothers, I probably would have been recalled by now. So it's a bit of a balance. Thank you very much. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for that, Honorable Bello, and I'd like to say you're still young. We are all still young, alhamdulillah. Thanks for that insight. So I had a lot of follow-up questions prepared for these discussions, but just like I had mentioned at the start of this session, we have a wealth of expertise seated here with us, and most of those follow-up questions have been, answered or thrashed adequately. So what I would like to do at this point, for want of time, is just to have commitment asks, starting with you, Your Excellency. Based on the background you've given us, based on the insights you've shared, do you think you could, would you recommend that, a regional compact bill should be drafted and financed, just to kind of sort of have a roadmap for the development of the northern region? Do you think all the regional development commissions, all the governance forum within the region should come as one and have a compact that drives, a common stand of these 19 states we all represent here today?
I'm sorry to disappoint you. I don't think that would really make any difference. I think what we're trying to say is, in putting a plan, it is better we start with what is our objective. If you take, for example, we have clear objectives. If you say, for example, you take mining, and we say to ourselves that we want in 10 years' time, to to be able to increase our production of iron ore, to steel production, and want to increase our limestone production in the north, want to increase our gold. So it is better for us to be specific as opposed to just build new bodies or institutions. So now, if we have that plan, while processing that plan, the rest will fit in. What do I mean by that? So take countries like Guinea, DRC. These are countries where in the mining sector, it is not driven by government. You have investors by large mining companies, Glencore, Rinto, they drive it. So if we agree that we want to address mining questions, how do we go about it? So our plan should be based on what we set ourselves as an objective. If it needs a regional body, then yes, but not to start first with creating offices that are not going to add value. Because let's go back again to, if you look at the level of production of oil or how oil has come about, it wasn't by chance. We didn't have the Totals, the Shell, the ExxonMobils way back coming here with the plan. But in mining, we're starting with artisan miners. They can't take us to where we need to go. So instead of us putting those institutions, I would suggest we take all these targets we want to have. You take agriculture. I mean, when I was governor, I can speak with a lot of experience in this, where largely what you see across northern Nigeria is peasant farming. The main objective is to move that to agribusiness. And in doing that again, you don't need any new commissions to do that. We should take the products. Is it to further increase rice production, totally self-sufficient, export to West Africa? Then we now start and say, who are those that can make this happen with the partnership of government? Then we put up the plan. So I think the plan should be driven based on what our objective is, as opposed to just setting up institutions across the place. It's just going to create bottleneck that will not take us anywhere. So that is what I think is a better plan.
Thank you very much, sir. So a common objective that all the already existing institutions need to align with. Thank you very much for that. So as a final follow-up question to you, Honorable Yakubu Dogara, I would like to ask if you would also, recommend a convening of a bipartisan legislative caucus on regional integration.
Hello? Okay, thank you very much. Sorry to disappoint you a bit. I would want to go the other way around. Actually, if we're talking about unlocking strategic opportunities in the north in relation to mining, agriculture, and power, like I said, we need to depart from doing business as usual and to do something that's radical and transformative. I want us as Northerners to accept the fact that help is not coming from anywhere. We have to take our destiny in our hands. First of all, what is the militating factor against the realization of northern potential? Number one is the issue of security. And I think it will amount to a travesty if we don't address that at this summit. My take is that with the kind of bloodletting we are witnessing in the north, if you are a person of faith, you will know that we are operating under a curse because it is human blood. And the effect of curse is that you sweat without results. And that is why we are sweating in this part of the country without any manifest result. It is unfortunate. I'm going to talk on issues that will affect governors. I wish they were seated here. Because it is said, if you have anything to say it to my face. I would have loved to say it to their faces. If it will mean pulling all the 19 northern states' resources together in order to tackle this issue of insecurity, we have to do it. Otherwise, what we're talking about here will amount to nothing in the midst of insecurity. We have to resolve that, even if it means pulling out resources across all the 19 states to tackle this. Once we have done that, the next question to ask is, how are we processing the funds that comes to the north? Somebody has said here that now so much is going to the states and the subnationals. How are we processing these funds in the north? Assuming nothing comes from anywhere. This is not rocket science. I said before, when we had regional governments, our fathers did it. So how are we now, how are they processing the funds that they were getting, and how are we processing it now? Just bear with me, I'll soon learn. Imagine the region where I come from, the Northeast. Honestly speaking, some of the things we're talking about, whether it is in agriculture, mining, or power, because I'm involved, I'm a farmer. Some of the resources that you need in order to provide the equipment are beyond the reach of an individual. But they are not beyond the reach of our governments. Take, for instance, the 6 states in my zone in the Northeast will say, okay, the only productive plant we have in the whole, to our shame, collective shame, as Northeasterners, is only Ashaka Cement. I don't know any other productive plant. Okay, assuming our 6 governors now come to say, okay, let's pool resources together, establish another cement producing plant, since we have excess of limestone in that zone. And then they look for a businessman who can bring a guarantee, because government is not a good runner of business in Nigeria. We've seen how government-run enterprises collapsed. Look for a businessman, a fellow northerner. He brings your collateral, hand over the facility to him. Let him run and pay you dividends. But what do we see? We are seeing, instead of the governors cooperating, they are competing. We are seeing flyovers everywhere, flyovers that leads to nowhere. It is not leading you to a productive plan. It is not leading you to an established market. You just fly over and you think you have arrived. No, but we can use the dividends we can get from those joint ventures to build the roads, to develop education and all other social institutions. Take, for instance, Kano, Kaduna, Jigawa, establishing like the biggest ranch in Africa, for instance. It will cost them nothing if they pool resources together. Bring one businessman, a northerner, and say, okay, run this plant, pay us dividends. We will have tanneries, we will create employment, we will create revenue. And at the end of the day, you can imagine the multiplier effect of that. Now, we'll go to North Central, Kwara, Kogi, maybe a Niger state. Let them too leverage on economies of scale and do something. You come here, Nasarawa Plateau, okay, Zamfara, Kebbi, Sokoto, for instance, can build a gold refinery. So all these golds, all these artisan miners, they now have a place, they can buy the thing from them at value. They can create jobs, deepen participation in that area of industry. And if you come to Nasarawa Plateau here, they can establish maybe processing plants relating to mining, like it's been done in Nasarawa State, for instance. But if you were to leave it to individual northerners, we don't have access to capital in this country. That is why we're beginning to think about de-risking loans. And that is where the agency I'm heading now, and the chairman of the board, comes into play. But these things have not been developed. So access to capital is a problem. No matter how patriotic you are as a northerner, you want to do business in the north, you want to establish a productive plan, you begin to look at factors of production. Do you have access to capital? Bigger. Access to land we have in abundance, then energy. So you see, it's a vicious cycle. Once you don't develop any of the three, it affects the other two. But we can turn this vicious cycle into a virtuous cycle if we integrate the development of these three sectors at once. We'll create employment for teeming unemployed youth. We will deepen our revenue base in the north and by extension even federal revenue. We will achieve energy sufficiency and food security as well. And then obviously, we will be dealing with insecurity. So for me, the development of northern Nigeria is not a regional prerogative. It must be seen as a national emergency, because if the vast number of people we have in the north are not developed, Nigeria is going nowhere. So it is a national emergency and it must be dealt with as such. But our governors should take the lead. That's the point I'm making. Thank you.
Thank you very much once again, Honorable. That was quite insightful. But before I come to you, Honorable Bello and Omar, I would like to throw another question to you, Your Excellency, as a follow-up to what Honorable Dogara just said. As a former governor and former chairman of the Nigeria Governors Forum, and also former Senate President, do you think this recommendation is possible?
I guess you're going to come back to me. Which recommendation? Which one of Honorable Speaker's recommendation is possible?
The governors coming together to share resources to drive one common objective.
I think, let's be fair. I think some of them are doing the right thing. We can see what is happening in Nasarawa. We can see what is happening in Zamfara, where governors are thinking outside the box. What I think we should not make the mistake of is to think that that's where really it's easy for to put the blame on governors. It goes beyond that. And that's why I go back to say that this is a collective responsibility. Let me just give you a basic example. Governor Yobe, Governor Bono, Governor Zamfara to an extent, Sina. In Nigeria today, I'm an investor coming to Nigeria to set up some industry. Is there any special incentive I get for going to set up in those states in the north as opposed to setting up in Lagos? Zero. So why do we think an investor would take that risk, that investment, and go and set up? That's why I'm saying that we have to have an holistic approach to this. It's easy to find people to put the blame on. By the end of the day, even if you put a super governor in those states today, you will not see those investments. But the point he's making is that, for example, if you partnership with someone in the private sector and say, look, like for example, you say in Bauchi now you have Ashaka Cement. It's been there for years. By now we should have started at train 2, train 3, train 4. If, again, I think that's the point he's making where, or Dito in Sokoto State, places like that. Those are the kind of collaborations. But to do that, as I said, we must have a plan based on what is our objective. If we say Northern Nigeria by year this, we want our cement production, then we begin to look at what are those things that we need to do. What's the role of the government? What's the role of national government? What is the role of the businessman? And then bring them together. I don't think they can help. I think the challenges today are so enormous. I mean, some of them, fair enough, are not thinking outside the box, because you have to think outside the box to bring this kind of investment. But you can contribute in your own partnership by saying, this is the amount it requires. I, X state, I am putting this investment. And then people have confidence. But beyond all that, unfortunately, in the last few years, we have the issue of insecurity, which makes it almost impossible for where an investor today will really have, unless there are incentives where the investors can say, I know there are security challenges. So, for example, there are security challenges in the South South, where people are breaking their pipe. But a business now looks at the risk and looks at the return and makes a decision. But do we have those incentives that make anybody to go? They do not exist in a holistic manner. So I would to an extent defend the governors to an extent. This is an ongoing discussion between those in the National Assembly and those of us the governors in this aspect. Some of them are doing what needs to be done, and some of them need to go beyond just, as I say, go beyond just building schools, building classrooms. But at the same time, we talk about them, you also talk about the voters. They will tell you, if I do all these things that people don't see, the voters will not vote me back. But if I do those things, those flyovers that go nowhere, people will vote and think I'll perform. So I think it's also, we, the followership too, must take part of this blame. Thank you.
This goes beyond our governors, and then we need to have a balance in prioritizing our tangibles and intangibles. Yeah.
But the reason I highlighted, and I'm very sorry, is because I was scheduled to meet the head of an agency who's going to be doing a recruitment. And apparently, my legislative duties now entails finding employment for my constituents. But it is not. It is absolutely not. But like His Excellency said, if at the end of my 2-year tenure, I don't get jobs for boys in either immigration or customs, I'm certainly a bad legislator, because people forget what our roles are. So yes, I was delayed to do some lobbying, and they even moved the appointment. Now, the reason why I highlighted this is because the basics they keep mentioning, I forgot one, and it's essential to everything: security. By the way, our thoughts are with the people in Katsina, Benue, Zamfara mining recently. And sadly, yesterday, a brilliant young girl, since I'm here for the youth, Somto, that works in Arise, was murdered just in Cut and Pay. So really, it's no longer even the tragedy here in the rural areas. I'm the only elected official here, and I would like to apologize sincerely as one of the leaders of this country, because we are not doing the right thing in terms of security, and blame can be given all around. But we have to know what our role is. Young people want me to get them jobs. I went to college in America, and I did my IB diploma in the United Kingdom. My friends there do not work for ministries and agencies, as the Senate President said. They work for Google, they work for Oracle, they work for... So really our job as legislators is to create that framework, and I'll get to that in terms of the youth. But the job of a government is to create a conducive environment. One of my closest friends is here, he just walked in, Mala Pispaero. During the tenure of the El Rufai administration, I laughed when His Excellency, the Senate President, talked about the voters. I remember my father was Minister of Abuja here and did a lot of demolition, of course. But when he got elected as governor of Kaduna, the Kaduna people wanted to see roads immediately. And I remember his first tenure, I remember asking him, I've not seen any roads, and he kept saying roads can easily be done. But they took that first tenure to add it, to partner with the likes of McKinsey and look at the financial situation of the state. culminating in bringing Ola $150 million aggregate investment into Kaduna State. And as the Honorable Speaker said, the value change that triggered is what should be the ideal relationship between a state government, a proper business. Honestly, I'll get in trouble for this, but I don't mind. If we will give the likes of Aleja Aliko Dangote, Abdul Samad Rabiu, all the businesses to run, as long as those businesses will provide jobs, I'm perfectly fine with it. Because the Honorable Speaker is right. Right now, the capacity for capital is lacking. I'm partly responsible for that, but there are reasons, because I chair banking. Interest rate is still considerably high for the right reasons. You know, now legislation, there's a bill I am personally sponsoring on factoring and receivables, where on MSMEs, factors can be created so young people can sell their invoices and raise capital. Is a practice that's very popular across the world. But in Nigeria, we've not tapped into it yet. Now, to conclude, there's a movement now under the leadership of Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, our amiable speaker, where they're promoting women representation to add more seats for women in the House of Reps. Maybe I'll see you there struggling with me. But there's advocates for that for young people as well, to earmark maybe 30% for young people and things. I have a problem with affirmative action. I think quality over things like that, you know, but I think the best thing we can do, those of us that have a voice, is to be decent role models and to show the older generation, the stakeholders, that we are willing to sit at the table, contribute as much as we can, and so forth, you know. But everything I wanted to add, my father's already added, really, you know, and I think the voters, you know, I like politicians that look at the eyes of the voters and tell them, look, this is not my job, this is not what I was elected to. I do that all the time. Am I not come back? I don't care to come back. That's what we should focus on, doing the best you can with what you have right now. In the end, I can't call out governors. I'm not a big man. But the removal of subsidy has certainly transferred more resources to the subnationals. And as I rightly said, with the removal of certain duties, including rails, by the way, transport, in the concurrent list, I think a lot of governors in the north have a lot to answer for. I don't want to comment on flyovers and things, but you know, there's really no excuse right now. You know, the federal government, to its credit, under the Ashwaja administration, has pushed resources to the state government. It's up to us as voters, up to you as voters, to keep us accountable. Once again, thank you very much, and sorry I took so much time. God bless you.
The reality is that there are some fundamentals that we have to look, right? And it's been mentioned, what's the objective, what's the primary objective, and the issue of security and things like that. But so these things have been said. But the other fundamental that we need to look at is that, you know, these so-called plans that we put in place to do certain things are sometimes the problem. And you end up with projects where we've seen a state where they imported, you know, turbines for a power plant and, you know, all the accolades. But when it landed in the port, they realized that it was a gas turbine, and they're about 1,500 kilometers from the nearest gas factory. So there are things that do not make sense when we are planning. So let the planners do the planning correctly. Finance follows good investment. So if you design something right and it's going to be realizable, then you're likely going to get finance from it. And finally, I also want to say that in doing the objectives, so when we look at agriculture, minerals, and power, there are some fundamentals. If you're going to do power, you have to look at how do you put in place power purchase agreements to unlock the power to the public sector to come in. If you're doing mining and you're trying to get people to come, have you done a JORC? JORC is a Joint Ore Reporting Council certification that tells you this is what you have there. There are some basic things that are needed to be put in place before you can ever hope that you're going to attract investment into those sectors. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for keeping that brief. For us to unlock the potential across mining, agri, and power, not just these sectors, across board, we need to go back to basics. We need to align our priorities and also come as a collective to drive regional development. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much, Mariam, and the panelists, distinguished panelists. Please put your hands together once again for very